get away from people. In the outside world, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, enter my darkness. Fear awaits you. And when someone is murdered in cold blood, does their soul really remain trapped on earth, seeking justice and salvation? Do they continue to seek revenge on all those who wronged them or did not stand by them until their rights are restored? Today's story is a very strange and terrifying one, about the revenge of a ghost stuck on earth, yearning for release but unable to find it as their unresolved justice still lingers. Curse of what? What nonsense is this, Khaled? Do you really believe in those superstitions, man? It's the curse of Saleh, Murad. Haven't you heard, my friend? This is not nonsense. Believe me, it's his curse before he was killed. At that, Murad burst out laughing. Trust me, there's no curse except in your worn-out mind, my friend, which makes you sell your apartment for less than half its price for those superstitions and illusions. It's an apartment that won't be replaced, in an excellent location and relatively close to the sea. Have you gone mad, Khaled? Have you lost your mind? Tell me. You don't know anything, Murad. I saw it with my own eyes that day. I almost got killed. I swear to you, it's not illusions or fantasies as you think. Maybe if someone told me that story, I wouldn't have believed it if it weren't for what I saw with my own eyes, me and my family that day. And if I'm imagining things, what about my wife? She still can't sleep or live without sedatives, and the kids have become attached to us. They can't sleep alone to this day. They wet their beds every night, despite the fact that it's been more than 3 months since the incident. At this, Murad looked at him in astonishment. To that extent, my friend, I'm not convinced by this strange talk. Who benefits from this? What happened in Alexandria, Khaled, that made you insist on selling the apartment quickly and at half its price? At this, Khaled looked at his friend with terror and said in a strange voice, "It's Saleh's curse, Murad. His curse made the residents of the building leave one after another." Khaled took a deep breath, closed his eyes tightly, and began to recount what happened to him 3 months ago during his last visit to Alexandria. "You know, I bought that apartment 3 years ago. It was a new building not yet completed. I furnished it and decorated it. I would go there every year to spend the summer vacation and sometimes during holidays and official vacations. I would escape from the crowds and the heat in Cairo. Everything was going well, and there were no problems until what happened during my last visit to Alexandria 3 months ago. We went, my family and I, to spend a week of vacation. The building was like a ghost town. Its entrance was dark and gloomy because most of the residents had left. Even the building's guard had abandoned his post, leaving it empty. There were many advertisements in the building's entrance to sell the remaining apartments at very low prices. I was astonished but didn't comment. We went up to the apartment, and just then, the door of the apartment opposite us creaked open, and an elderly woman with a look of terror appeared. She looked at us with surprise and suspicion. We greeted her, but she didn't respond. Instead, she slammed her door shut in our faces and hurried back into her apartment. We didn't comment. We know how the elderly behave and their strange actions as they grow older and senile. That night after midnight, my wife shook me violently, screaming hysterically, telling me that someone was outside. She saw a shadow passing in front of the room and heard things crashing outside. I tried to calm her down. Maybe it's one of the kids, Sode. Don't be afraid. Don't worry. There's no one here. At that moment, she pointed with her hands in terror. The kids were frightened to sleep alone, so they came and slept with us in the other bed in the room. I felt tense, my friend. I won't hide it from you. I know my wife well. She's not the type to imagine things at all and doesn't scare easily. I didn't show any fear, so as not to increase her anxiety. I took one of the heavy artifacts from beside the bed and went to search the apartment quietly, but I found nothing. I entered the kitchen and was horrified by what I saw there. All the dishes in the kitchen were smashed on the floor. And then I caught a glimpse of something black, darting like a shadow, running quickly. I jumped in fright and tried to chase after it, but I found nothing. The apartment door was open. Was it a thief who fled? A truly stupid thief. What could he possibly steal from a sparsely furnished summer apartment? Why today? We hadn't entered it for a year. It had been locked up. Didn't he find a better day to rob it than today? That fool? I went and closed the apartment door while trembling. I tried to reassure Soad loudly because she was devastated, crying. Before I reached the bedroom, I felt something push me from behind with force. I fell hard on my face and felt a chilling cold, as if someone were standing on my back. I felt suffocated, anxious, and terrified. I tried to scream and call for my wife, but my screams didn't come out. I didn't have the strength to do anything. I gathered my strength and called out to Soad in pain. Here came Soad with the kids after they woke up from the mother's screams and wailing. Soad screamed in fright when she saw me. "What happened, Khaled? Are you okay?" She helped me to get up with difficulty. I looked at her and didn't speak, for I knew there was something else in the apartment with us, but it wasn't human. I knew, and I wouldn't say anything so I wouldn't frighten her and the kids. I went and turned on the Quran radio and started reciting what I had memorized from the Book of God. I didn't mention the matter, but I reassured my wife and the kids that there was nothing to be afraid of, and they went to sleep. I couldn't sleep a wink, and I kept thinking about the situation. Why did the residents leave their apartments and sell them for less than their value? In the morning, my wife and the kids went to buy some supplies from the market, and I went to knock on the door of my elderly neighbor to inquire about what was happening. But she didn't open the door. I knew she was inside. The sound of Quran recitation was loud, and the scent of incense was coming from her apartment. I kept ringing the bell and knocking on the door hard, knowing she was inside. After a while, she finally opened the door, looking at me in fright, saying, "Did Saleh visit you, my son?" At this, I looked at her in confusion, not understanding what she was talking about. I asked her, "What are you talking about? Who is Saleh? Didn't he visit you yesterday, my son? I see it in your eyes." "Tell me, who is this Saleh, and what's happening in the building? I felt something strange in the apartment yesterday. It's Saleh, my son, Saleh and his curse. And who is this Saleh, madam?" At that, the old woman looked at Khaled in astonishment, as if he came from another world, saying, "Who here doesn't know him, my son? Come in, and I'll tell you his story." She entered her apartment, sat on the nearest chair to the door, closed it, and then turned to me with suspicion. She took a deep breath, shook her head, and then said, "Don't you know Saleh? He's that dark-skinned, lively boy who came from Upper Egypt to work as a plasterer. He was the one who finished that building and painted it. Saleh knew everything and tried to earn as much money as possible from any job to complete the dowry for his cousin, whom he loved and wanted to marry. Saleh agreed with the owner of the building to finish all the necessary work for the building, plastering and painting, in exchange for giving him the 2 rooms and the hall on the roof. The man welcomed him, as Saleh would save him a lot of money. The apartment on the roof wasn't even completed. He was trying to save himself from the high costs and demands of workers whose wages had risen. However, he refused to write a contract for this agreement. Saleh worked hard at what he was asked to do and lost a lot of weight. He was helpful, cheerful, and loved to assist others. Everyone liked him until that fateful day, my son. Saleh fell from the roof of the building after losing his balance on a very cold, windy day while painting. I warned him not to work in that weather, but he wanted to finish his apartment to bring his bride. Saleh died instantly upon falling on his head from the 10th floor. But he asked the people around him to give the money from the apartment to his mother. Yet people didn't understand what money and what apartment he meant. His family came and took his body. After a few days, Saleh's father came to claim the apartment for his son, but the owner of the building denied that Saleh had anything. The grieving father lashed out at the owner, accusing him of fraud and that he wouldn't let his son's hard work go to waste. He knew everything and told him about the agreement and the apartment. The owner insisted on denying and lying, claiming there was no paper or contract. The father hit him hard with a stick, injuring him severely and opening his head. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Since then, the residents of the building began to see Saleh at night. He would ring their doorbells repeatedly, and through the peepholes, they would see him standing, drenched in blood. No one opened the door for him, so he began to appear in their homes at night, scaring them and instilling terror in their hearts. Some moved out of the building until that day when the owner sold Saleh's apartment on the roof, which he had furnished with his sweat and effort before his death. He was waiting for his bride and the wedding. After the apartment was sold, we were surprised when the new buyer and his wife came screaming after midnight, saying, "The apartment is haunted. The apartment is haunted. Saleh won't let you enjoy this building after he lost his rights." The residents were astonished at the man. He didn't know Saleh and hadn't seen him. Since then, the man never returned to the apartment, not even to retrieve his belongings and furniture. He left everything for Saleh. Every day after midnight, we would hear the sound of a television and commotion in Saleh's apartment, as if someone lived there, but no one dared to approach the apartment to this day. Khaled sighed in frustration, saying, "What injustice! Why didn't the owner give him his apartment and ease his tortured soul? I don't understand why. I went to him, my son, to urge him to do so, but he's foolish and refused. I begged him to drop the charges against the grieving father who lost his son after Saleh visited me and asked me to do so that day. But the man refused and insulted me, beating me, my son. 2 days later, God's revenge came upon him. His wife and children died after one of them left the gas on while they were sleeping. He was traveling and returned to find their bodies. Indeed, your Lord is slow to punish, but does not neglect my son." At this, Khaled looked at her in astonishment. Is what this old woman is saying true, or is she losing her mind? He was confused, not understanding anything. In that moment, the apartment door opened wide, and an elderly man entered the house, looking at Khaled in surprise. Khaled remembered that he was the owner of the building from whom he bought the apartment. He recognized him from before and stood in shock, thinking, "How are you, sir?" But the man didn't respond to his greeting. Instead, he shouted at him, "Who are you? And how did you get into my apartment, you thief?" "Thief. I'm Khaled, your neighbor from Cairo, from the adjacent apartment. How did you get into the apartment? I don't understand. The old lady opened the door for me." At this, the man fell onto the nearest chair, saying in terror, "Which old lady? How long will I have to keep telling you that my wife is dead? She died, along with all my children, from gas suffocation. Don't you understand? Forgive me, Saleh. I know you are taking revenge on me, my son, and I deserve it." After that, the man collapsed on the floor. I stood there in shock, looking for the old lady, but she had vanished from the house. At this point, I had no choice but to return to my apartment, for my wife had come back from outside, and the children were screaming in terror. My wife looked on in shock as everything in the apartment was falling to the ground and shattering on its own, and a large black cat was meowing in a terrifying way, causing fear in our hearts. I took the kids and my wife, and we returned to Cairo. We left all our belongings and clothes there. Let everything go to hell. We won't return to that cursed apartment again." At this, Murad looked at his friend in disbelief, still not convinced by what he heard, but seeing it as an opportunity that won't come again, he said seriously, "Will you sell me the apartment, Khaled? Are you serious? After everything I've told you, Murad, about Saleh's curse?" "Yes, I don't believe in those superstitions and the talk that has no scientific explanation." "Fine, Murad. Let's write the contract now so you don't change your mind, my friend." A month later, Khaled's mobile rang while he was on his way to work. It was his friend Murad, talking to him about the beauty of Alexandria and the apartment, inviting him to come with his kids for 2 days, saying there were no curses in the apartment. Everything the old lady told him was lies, and Saleh didn't die. Khaled refused, apologizing that he wouldn't go to Alexandria again. He hated it, and so did the kids. They would go to Marsa Matru instead, as he had bought an apartment there at a tempting price. On the way, Khaled met his friend Mohammed, who looked sad and troubled. When Khaled asked him about his sadness, he told him about the death of their friend Murad, along with his entire family, a week ago in their apartment in Alexandria. They all suffocated and were poisoned because someone forgot to turn off the gas at night, causing it to leak and kill them all in their sleep. At that moment, Khaled dropped the phone to the ground. Who had he just been talking to a few minutes ago? Was Saleh's curse still chasing him? How would he rid himself of it, he wondered.